Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords, and as you may be well aware at this point, the attempted first episode of the RPG Pundit encounter turned out to be a complete disaster. So, for reasons completely unknown to me, because I'd done it before, I've done tons of live streams, and I've done at least one live stream that had a go live together aspect to it. But this time, I was going to have Alexander Macris as the person I would be interviewing. I had prepared questions and everything. It was great. And he came in time and there was no problem. And when I tried to get in, it just kept saying, we cannot connect at this time, and try again, and nothing was working. And he only had an hour to give me. That was one of his conditions. And by the time we got to like the 40-minute mark, I decided, well, we can't do this. So there was just no way. I tried everything. I tried rebooting the phone. I tried clearing the cache of the YouTube and everything else, but it just didn't seem to work. I then immediately went on and put on a live stream by myself that was only like 3 minutes long, just because I wanted to see, like, can I connect when it's just me? And yes, I could. So I don't know. It's either a problem with the Go Live Together feature, or it was a problem that had something to do with Alex's connection. But regardless, we had to abandon the effort. So probably in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be trying again. And I don't know if I haven't asked yet if Alex is going to be able to be available at that time. If he is, great. If not, he will undoubtedly be a guest on a future occasion, and we'll have someone else as my first guest. But yeah, I'm very sorry that turned out. It was nothing. It was something completely beyond our control. And I guess we're going to see how that works out later. Anyways, today I'm wanting to talk about something different. I've become thoughtful now that officially 1D&D is out. And what that means is that also officially 5th edition, the edition that I helped to create, is no longer the official edition of Wizards of the Coast. It is now an older edition. And so it had a history of 10 years, basically, 2014 to 2024. And the question that came to my mind is, was 5th edition a success? And of course, there are some definitions. I mean, the question is, how do you define success, right? Because by some definitions, without a doubt, 5th edition was a success. It was the most profitable edition of D&D that Wizards ever made. It was the longest running one. It lasted for 10 years. That's way longer than any of the other editions that Wizards did. And that was because it kept selling. It was doing really, really well. And ultimately, I think that the change that happened was not really the fault of the system, of 5th edition as a system, but rather of added on stuff that had come later, and bad source books and adventure books that were no longer selling, and the fact that for the 50th anniversary they wanted to release the new edition at that moment, supposedly appealing to the 50th anniversary, even though technically 2/3 of the new books are only going to come out on the 51st anniversary, which it doesn't sound quite as good, does it? So it was successful in terms of massively selling. It was successful in terms of bringing in a whole new couple of generations into playing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm being very specific with my words there. They're playing Dungeons and Dragons using the 5th edition rules. But then there are other things that one might want to consider. So one of these is how successful was it from the perspective of design, right? And from that perspective, what you could say is that it has some very good points. Some of the things that made it successful are based on the design, and then it has some things that are not so good. So the success in the design is that it is a game that is very easy to learn, and that is very accommodating to the casual player. And I said this before in other videos, right? That it's a game that you don't have to be one of these rules lawyers or min-maxers or something like that. You don't have to thoroughly research the rules with great intensity and then learn how to manipulate those rules to get great advantage. You know, obviously there are a few things that probably a guy who's read the rules will know better than somebody who hasn't read the rules, let's say, and who's being guided by the DM in creating the character. But it's not nearly the same as, say, in 3rd edition, where the game was designed with the idea in mind that the more that you obsessively studied the rules, the bigger advantage you would have over everybody else. It was a building game, right? And that's how you ended up having things with 3rd edition, like people basically writing out every single bonus and feat that they were going to take, and where they were going to put all their skill points with a character they haven't even rolled yet, but that'll be it, right? Like from level 1 to level 20, they'd already plotted out everything, and it was all not designed on the basis of role play or the events that are going to happen to the character. They're just based on maximizing the character, right? So this meant that it favored rules expertise. The player character was a casual guy, had no idea what he was doing, would be at a severe disadvantage in creating a first level character compared to the first level character created by somebody who has researched the rules. And 5th edition did the exact opposite. It created a situation where a casual player would not be at a great disadvantage. They would, in general, be at a fairly equal level compared to the guy that has been a meticulous reader of the rules. And that was a huge success because it made it very easy to join, and it didn't make it frustrating to play if you were the new guy at a table full of guys who had been studying the rules for a long time. So it encouraged to draw people in. So it definitely brought in people to play D&D, to play that edition of D&D, right? And then in other senses, from the point of view of design, you could say it was a failure in that the creators of 5th edition had certain ideas inherent to their design that did not pan out. The main one, which again I have talked about before, is that we had designed 5th edition with the idea that it would be incredibly modular, that it would be incredibly easy to modify and create house rules and choose different options that would then allow for every DM to have his campaign work a little differently than every other DM, depending on which options they wanted to choose, on how they wanted to change the rules. We thought everybody was going to be working on changing the rules, and that there would be a whole bunch of different variants, you could say, campaign by campaign perhaps, of D&D. And none of that happened, because the audience we got was not an audience that was interested in that. They want to play the rules precisely as written in the median version, which, in retrospect, kind of fits in with the issue of casuals. In a way, we had made a mistake there in that we had done two different things. One was make the game super easy for casuals, and the other one was make the game super modular for house ruling. When in fact those two things come in a very different kind of context, right? That usually part of what the casuals want is an experience where they don't have to learn about rules changes because they don't particularly want to learn about the rules, you know? And so it was a bit of a jumbled set of priorities there. Not entirely, because really what we were wanting was for the DM to be able to be modular and the players to be linear, so to say, right? To be just going along with whatever the DM chose for his homebrew. But it wasn't going to turn out that way, right? It also had to do with the fact that the audience of 5th edition were millennials. Millennials, as you know, are conformists. They love to obey, right? They want to find an authority figure that tells them from a position of on high, this is what you have to do, these are the rules, this is the virtuous thing, and then just do that, right? So they went out and sought out Jeremy Crawford, who told them what the rules were. And, so from the point of view of accomplishing what we had hoped would be accomplished, we had two real goals, right? One was to create an evergreen edition of D&D, which obviously this wasn't a literal one because it's now over, but it was technically one in the sense that there's no reason why 5th edition had to end now, right? There's no situation where the rules have become unwieldy, right? Like you saw arguably in first, certainly with the introduction of, Unearthed Arcana and stuff like that. And definitely in second, and absolutely definitely in third and 3.5, which were the worst cases of this, that you had this rules inflation and rules bloat that ended up making the game increasingly unmanageable until it collapsed, You didn't have that in 5th edition. There was nothing inherent that said that 5th edition had to end now, right? It's not that it was no longer a well-functioning game. It continued to be a well-functioning game and could have continued to be it for another 30 years, for as far as we know, if it wasn't that the adventures for those games were being written by idiots and therefore had stopped selling, and because WotC thought it could make a quick cash grab by announcing a new edition for the anniversary that they don't care about. Then there's the question of, on a totally different note, of what is the measure of the success of 5th edition in terms of what is good for the hobby? And this is the trickiest part, and where I get to the main thing that I wanted to point out is something that I got to thinking that I really don't know the answer to for sure, but I pretty much do know the broad and general answer. So if you take a look here, you've got the Gonzo Fantasy Companion. This is a source book for the World of the Last Sun, but it's also a generic thing for using Gonzo, for adding Gonzo fantasy elements to your game. But in this context, the point is that it is part of the World of the Last Sun. The World of the Last Sun is a campaign that I have been running. I should have probably grabbed the World of the Last Sun book for that matter, because it's the main book, the World book. Neither of them are rules books, but that's because my World of the Last Sun campaign is a DCC campaign. Okay, and that campaign, that DCC campaign, World of the Last Sun, which is also where the Gonzo Fantasy Companion comes from, all of them, that is a campaign that I have been running for over 11 years. That is 11 years playing every 2 weeks, playing 6 hours per session. So you can do the math and figure out just how many hours that is, how many TV seasons that would be, how deep the lore is of that campaign. It's absolutely wild. It's the best campaign I've ever run. It's definitely the funniest campaign I've ever run. It's extremely fun to play. And if you want to see examples of that, you can go to Bill the Elf's channel. Well, if you want to hear examples of it, go to Bill the Elf's channel. He always records the audio of our gaming sessions, and you can see that we're all, you can see the reason why it's still going unbelievably strong after 11 years. There's no sign of it stopping, right? It's not winding down. It's not getting boring. It just keeps being fun. And, that is a hell of a lot of sessions, right? That is hundreds of sessions of play. My question is this. So, D&D 5th edition is 10 years old, right? And that turned out to be its lifespan. Is there anyone who has been playing the same D&D campaign for the last 10 years? Is there anyone that's been doing the same thing as I did with DCC, where they have been, for the last 10 years, every 2 weeks playing a 6-hour game? And that it's been the same game, right? The same campaign in the same world. Maybe not with the same characters, because some of them might have died or something, but that. And I don't know for sure. I can't say. I mean, maybe we can find someone out there. Maybe we can look and do a search through the internet and try to find if there's someone who have been playing the same 5th edition campaign for 10 years. I'm not sure one exists. And that's why I kept saying that 5th edition brought in a lot of people who wanted to play D&D in the 5th edition. I did not say it brought in a lot of people into the hobby, because that remains to be seen. It seems to me that an awful lot of the success of D&D is also a success of bringing in these casual players, and that they're always going to be casual players, which is to say that sooner or later they're not going to be there anymore. We know from studies that have been made that the average 5th edition campaign lasts 6 sessions. That's the average. That means half of all D&D campaigns last less than 6 sessions. Okay? I'm guessing an awful lot of them last only 1 session, you know. I don't know what the average is for other editions. I don't know what it is for Dungeon Crawl Classics, but 6 sessions seems to be a very, very low number for an average campaign, at least to me. Now, I get it that I run really long campaigns. You know, like all of my campaigns end up, not all, because sometimes I do little mini-series campaigns, but almost all of my campaigns end up running for years, right? World of the Last Sun is now the longest running campaign I've ever done, but I did at least 2 others that lasted a decade, you know. That is not something that was uncommon. I know a lot of other people. I mean, supposedly Double D, for example, Diversity and Dragons, has been running the same Birthright campaign for like 25 years. You know, I don't think he's doing it quite every 2 weeks or something, but he's been doing it. It's still around. I'm not sure. First of all, I'm seriously not sure if there will be ongoing, like if 25 years from now or 15 years from now, there'll be people still playing 5th edition. And second, because I do know, for example, that there are some small pockets out there of people that are playing 3rd edition, that they just never quit, right? They didn't go on to Pathfinder, they didn't go on to OSR, they just kept playing using the 3.5 books or whatever, right? And they're just running their little campaign. Will that happen with 5th? I'm not sure. So, like, my suspicion is that a lot of what 5th edition accomplished was in some ways ephemeral, because it never, one of the problems is that the default level, and again, we thought that this would change with the modular nature of 5th edition, that you'd have DMs that would play a much grittier version, a much more superpowered version, or whatever. The default version of 5th edition is kind of a never-ending easy mode. You know, like it's not, it doesn't actually aid a lot to the creation of substance. It's middle of the road. And I think that in a lot of cases, that will mean that there isn't going to be a long-term impact on the hobby from 5th edition. I do think there might be some lessons learned, right? Like, it still is a lesson to be learned, although I'm not sure WotC has learned it, at least the current people in WotC. Now, all the real people that were involved in 5th edition's creation are pretty much gone. The ones that are left were just kind of writing monkeys or something, not people that actually were big contributors to it. But, you know, I think that a lot of them don't realize this even, but that this casual, the emphasis on casuals instead of the emphasis on, you know, rules lawyers is a very good way to draw in an audience. But at the same time, I don't think 5th edition, like, it never really got a real substance of its own, right? Like, 1st edition had it, for sure, as did, you know, Basic Expert with Mystara and all that. And 2nd edition had it in a big way, not so much from its rules, which were not all that impressive, but from its worlds, right? It was the edition of world making in terms of, like, these really interesting and unusual new directions that they took settings in for the time. And 3rd edition had it because of its concentrated mechanics and you know, its revision in some ways of a lot of the elements of classic D&D. 4th obviously didn't, and 5th I don't know if it does or not, but I'm not sure it does. I think it might have been different if it had been a different audience. You know, if there had been people that had looked into the modularity of 5th edition and had made this enormous variety of styles that would have been like the OSR, but for 5th edition, you know, where there was where people were writing third-party books that had fantastic modifications of the core 5th edition rules into like other genres or other styles or different power levels or things like that. Then maybe, but that was not the audience it got. So my own point of view is that it was clearly a financial success for Wizards of the Coast. But I'm not sure, and it was a success as a system for in and of itself in terms of what it tried to accomplish, pretty much. It wasn't really a success in terms of what the designers envisioned it to be. And I don't think for sure that it was a success for the hobby itself. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that actually there are going to be a whole bunch of 5th edition players that are not going to get on board with playing in a virtual tabletop for subscription money and having to pay extra for skins and tokens and stuff like that, which is very clearly where things are going, where there's going to be, you know, artificial intelligence DMs in the virtual tabletop that will run stupid games for you. I hope that a whole bunch of those people, instead of just quitting, will go and look at other games, right? Like they'll get into stuff like, you know, well, like some of these games that are coming out to compete with D&D, like the OSR, like, you know, older editions or any other thing, right? That they will get in there and that maybe some of them will make their own games and who knows, right? Like I want to believe that might be possible, right? And there are some people obviously who have been making their own product, third-party product off of 5th edition. There are quite a lot of them if you look at the DMs Guild, and maybe some of them will go off on their own and turn out to be big names. I mean, the creator of Shadow Dark was that, you know, was a third-party 5th edition maker, and then now they've gone and made their own OSR game, and it's been very successful. So maybe there are more people like that, or maybe they're just a very small rarity, but that the majority of the people who came in for the casual version of D&D, which was what 5th edition ultimately was, are not really going to be interested in anything that is not quite as casual. So on that sad note, I guess that's most of what I wanted to say. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Check out all of my products, because mine are definitely not for power gamers or for casuals. They're for people who want to have really interesting material in their OSR gaming. Stuff like my Dark Albion setting, which is a setting for Lion and Dragon or any other OSR game where you can play Game of Thrones styles intrigue in the War of the Roses with, you know, but the medieval magical, the legendary version of the War of the Roses with magic and witchcraft and all that stuff. Star Adventure, which is a small product, only costs $9.99 in print, a lot and less than that in PDF. And you can use it. It's a rule set, a complete rule set for space opera gaming, but a small and easy to use one. Or again, the Gonzo Fantasy Companion, which is full of stuff that you can use to add more weird and science fantasy and Gonzo fantasy material to your campaign. It's also basically got material that comes out of my Last Sun campaign. So if you've got World of the Last Sun, you should really check it out. It's a great product. It has a whole bunch of random generators of different kinds, rules on making mutants, mutant animals, rules on robots, rules on high-tech weapons, rules on generating ancient complexes, and many, many more. Lots of magic items and monsters and other things like that. So be sure to check that out, the Gonzo Fantasy Companion. And be sure also to check out the Pundit Files, which are at the Red Room store. Now, I know some of you might be wondering, where's the newest issue? The thing is, I've been working very hard right now on the first bigger Baptism of Fire source book. So I've pushed back the release by a week. So at the time that this video comes out, you should be seeing the new issue, which is Pundit Presents, I forget if it's 20 or 21, the Medieval Calendar Year, which is going to be a complete guide for how you can add a sense of time of the seasons and of different like I plot out how the year went for people in the medieval world, right? Like what they were doing in each month, what were the religious festivals like. There's adventure hooks obviously involved there. Descriptions of some really crazy stuff that like, you know, like that we don't, you know, that is very different from how we do things today. You know, for starters, January 1st was not a big deal, right? Second, Christmas was not rated as a holiday for kids, you know, and there's lots of other incredible things. Even if you're a like churchgoer, you're going to be surprised by some of the stuff there as far as like what were the major religious celebrations, right? Like, you know, I'm sure you know about Christmas and Easter, but do you know about Rogation Day, which was a super important religious ceremony in the Christian world in the Middle Ages that today almost nobody knows about? So be sure to check that out. It's a great way to, like, even whether or not you're playing in a medieval authentic world, you can easily modify this to give your world a sense of the movement of time and of the seasons in the course of the year. And you can pick that up from the Red Room store, and only the Red Room store. The links of all of these books and all my other books are in the description below. And at the Red Room store, the Pundit Files, each issue only costs about $3.50. So if you can find someone to give you $3.50, then you will be able to buy an issue of the Pundit Files. All right, so that's everything for today. Currently smoking this Ben Wade Rhodesian plus Argento Latakia.